The bell above the diner door chimed that afternoon, too sharp, too loud, like it knew something was about to shift. Ariel was wiping down a counter when she noticed the woman standing there barefoot in cheap flats, clutching her purse as if it might disappear. One foot was swollen, the other trembled. "I don't usually ask strangers for things," the woman said, embarrassed, defiant. "But my feet hurt. Could you help?" Ariel knelt anyway. She didn't care who was watching.
Enjoying the story so far? Whether you're listening while trying to catch some sleep, getting through your chores, or just taking a quiet moment for yourself, we're glad you're here. Take a minute and tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and stay with us for more stories like this.
The eggs were overcooked again. Ariel slid the plate back across the counter with a practiced smile that said, "I hear you," while her eyes said, "You ordered them extra firm." The diner was in its usual late afternoon disarray, forks clinking like loose change, the sizzle of the grill hissing its own complaints, the radio wedged between stations because someone insisted static was vintage. Coffee cups multiplied the longer you ignored them. "I'm in no rush," a man in a business casual sweater announced, tapping his watch. Of course he was. Ariel refilled his coffee with the calm precision of someone diffusing a small bomb. No rush was a lie customers told themselves to feel generous. It usually lasted about 45 seconds. She moved down the counter, wiping, refilling, nodding. The rhythm steadied her. Tuition was due in 2 weeks, rent in 10 days. HR textbooks waited in her backpack like a promise she wasn't allowed to break. She kept moving because stopping made the math louder. The bell chimed. Not the cheerful kind, the wrong kind. Too sharp, like it knew something. A woman stood just inside the door, clutching a purse to her chest. Not rummaging, holding. Her flats looked tired. So did her knees. She scanned the room the way people do when they're trying to remember where they meant to be. Ariel clocked it in a glance. Not panic, not drama. Confusion with opinions. The woman made her way to the counter and sat, lowering herself carefully as if gravity had recently changed its mind about her. Ariel approached with menus and water. "Hi there." The woman screeched at the radio. "Is this supposed to relax people?" Ariel glanced at the speaker. Static popped like a stubborn campfire. "Management says it builds character." "Ah," the woman said, satisfied. "Then it's doing too much." Ariel smiled before she realized it. "Coffee?" "Yes." "And," the woman hesitated, then waved a hand. "No, I'll decide after my feet stop screaming at me." Ariel followed the gesture. One ankle was swollen, not alarming, just honest. The kind of ache that came from being upright longer than you should. "I'm Maggie," the woman said, "in case I forget later." "Ariel," she said, "I'll bring the coffee." Maggie watched her pour with interest. "You're very steady." "It's the fear. Keeps me focused." Maggie laughed. It surprised them both. They talked in the gaps, about the weather that refused to pick a side, about how menus never had enough soup options, about the indignity of chairs that creaked when you sat down like they had a comment to make. Then Maggie leaned forward, lowered her voice. "This is a strange thing to ask a stranger." Ariel braced herself. People asked strange things all the time. "My feet hurt. I don't suppose..." Ariel didn't let her finish. She glanced at the counter, then the floor, then the door. The diner was busy but not crowded. She nodded once. "I'll be right back." She filled a bowl with warm water, grabbed towels, found lotion in her bag, half-used, coconut-scented, a remnant of better intentions. She knelt. Maggie blinked. "Oh, you didn't have to do that." "I know." The first touch made Maggie inhale sharply, then sigh. Her shoulders dropped like a decision had finally been made. "This is the most action my feet have seen in years." They were beginning to feel neglected. Ariel smiled, working carefully. "Feet have a way of holding grudges. You should hear what mine say about stairs." They fell into a rhythm. Ariel's hands steady, Maggie's commentary dry and unfiltered. The world narrowed to warmth and pressure and relief. Ariel focused on the simple fact of it. This helped. That was enough. She didn't notice the phone lift at the corner booth, didn't clock the quiet ripple moving through the room, didn't hear forks pause mid-air. She was thinking about her parents, alive, proud, unable to help, and how independence wasn't heroic so much as necessary. She was thinking about HR case studies and policies that looked clean on paper and messy in real life. She was thinking that sometimes, if you didn't hurry, people relaxed into themselves. Maggie's voice softened. "You're good at this." Ariel shrugged. "I pay attention." "That's rare," Maggie said. "People rush, even when they say they won't." Ariel snorted, especially then. They laughed, quietly. When Ariel finally stood, she felt it. The air had changed. She turned. Every face was on her. The man with no rush stared at his coffee like it had betrayed him. A woman near the door dabbed her eyes, embarrassed by it. Someone's phone hovered, unashamed now. Ariel's smile faltered. Not fear, awareness. She looked back at Maggie, who was flexing her toes, pleased. "Well," Maggie said, "that was worth the trip." Ariel straightened, suddenly unsure what had just happened. The bell chimed again. Too loud, too late. What if kindness happens when you're too busy being human to notice the audience?
Maggie stayed longer than most people did. Not because she ordered more food, she didn't, but because she sat like the booth had finally agreed to her terms. Ariel noticed the way Maggie's shoulders loosened, the way her hands stopped clutching the purse and began resting on the table, palms down, like they trusted gravity again. "You can go," Maggie said, waving her off when Ariel checked back. "I'm not going anywhere dramatic." Ariel smiled. "I'll risk it." She wiped nearby tables and kept Maggie in her peripheral vision. It wasn't vigilance exactly, it was awareness. The same instinct that made her double-check locks at night and read people's moods before their mouths caught up. Maggie hummed along with the radio static, confidently wrong. Then she frowned. Did this place always smell like toast? "It's a diner," Ariel said. "That's the brand." I prefer places that smell like decisions." Ariel laughed before she could stop herself. Maggie looked pleased, like she'd landed something on purpose. There were moments when Maggie was sharp as a tack. She commented on the mismatched salt shakers. She clocked the manager's fake politeness from across the room. She corrected Ariel when she mixed up cream and half. Then there were the other moments. "Do you know where the bus stop moved to?" Maggie asked suddenly. "It didn't," Ariel said gently. "Oh," Maggie nodded, absorbing that. A beat passed. "That makes sense. I thought it was being difficult." Ariel leaned against the counter. Buses are known for their personalities. Maggie smiled, then squinted. "Did I already ask you your name?" "Yes." "And?" "Ariel." "Pretty. I knew that." There was no panic in her confusion, no embarrassment, just a quiet recalibration, like she'd misplaced her glasses and found them on her head. Ariel didn't rush to fill the gaps. She'd learned that silence could be kind if you let it breathe. They talked about things Maggie half remembered and fully believed. A yellow house near water. A man who liked his toast burnt but complained anyway. A man who was always in a hurry. He hated being told what to do, Maggie said, smiling at the memory, which is funny because he did exactly what I asked, eventually. Ariel caught the way Maggie's fingers tightened around the purse strap. Sounds like he listened. In his own way, Maggie tilted her head. I don't think he ever thought I liked him much. Ariel felt that one land somewhere familiar. Sometimes, she said carefully, people show care the way they know how, not the way it's received. Ariel studied her, eyes clear in a way that surprised Ariel. That's very HR of you. Ariel blinked. How did you? You carry yourself like someone who mediates arguments in their head. Also, you said received. Ariel laughed, a little self-conscious. I'm studying it, eventually. Good. Systems need people who notice the human parts. There it was, that quiet ache under the banter. Maggie's dignity was stubborn. She refused pity the way some people refused help. She corrected Ariel when she misspoke. She insisted on paying for her coffee with bills smoothed flat and counted twice. But there were cracks, moments where her gaze drifted, where she asked the same question again, then laughed at herself like it was a party trick. Memory's playing hide and seek, she said lightly. It thinks it's clever. Ariel met her where she was, didn't contradict unless it mattered, didn't correct unless safety leaned in. She'd learned independence young, not the shiny kind, but the practical one, where you don't wait for rescue because you can't afford to. Maggie reminded her of that, of how being on your own wasn't always chosen. Sometimes it just happened while you were busy surviving. When Maggie finally stood, it was slower than before. Ariel hovered without hovering. "I should go, before I forget why I came. Do you remember?" "Not exactly," she smiled, "but I'm better now." They walked to the door together. The bell chimed. Normal this time. Outside, the light was softer. Maggie paused on the sidewalk, looking unsure. Ariel waited. "Will you see me again?" Maggie asked. Ariel didn't promise anything dramatic. "I'm here most afternoons." Maggie nodded, filing it somewhere. "Good. I like places where people don't rush." She turned, took 3 steps, then stopped, looked back. "You're very steady." Ariel smiled. "It's the fear." Maggie laughed, and this time it sounded like relief. Ariel watched her walk away until she disappeared into the flow of the street. The diner noise swelled behind her again. Orders, complaints, life continuing like it always did. She picked up her rag, wiped the counter once more, and felt something settle quietly in her chest. Not an obligation, recognition.
Ariel found out she was viral the same way she found out most inconvenient truths, through her phone vibrating itself into panic. She was halfway up the stairs to her apartment, keys in her mouth, bag slipping off her shoulder, when the screen lit up again, and again, and again. Group chats she hadn't opened in months, unknown numbers, a voicemail notification from someone who absolutely did not sound like a human being. She stopped on the landing and checked. Her face stared back at her. Not posed, not smiling, kneeling. A headline hovered above it in aggressive white letters. "Waitress restores faith in humanity with simple act of kindness." Ariel stared, then frowned. "I kneel once," she muttered to the empty stairwell, "and now I'm a headline?" She scrolled. The comments were a mess of humanity in its rawest form. "This made me cry. She deserves everything good. Why isn't this normal? Where was the staff? Why was she touching a customer? This is fake. This is beautiful. Call HR." HR, she thought dryly, of course. Her chest tightened, not with pride, but with something closer to exposure. People were projecting entire narratives onto a moment they didn't understand. Savior, exploitation, performance, policy violation. She hadn't been any of those things. She'd just been there. Her phone buzzed again, this time her manager. Ariel exhaled slowly before answering. "Hi. We need to talk," he said, not angry, just overwhelmed. "Tomorrow." "About?" A pause. "Everything." She hung up and sank onto the step, back against the railing. The laughter from earlier, the easy rhythm with Maggie, felt like it belonged to a different life. Now there were eyes everywhere, judging eyes, grateful eyes, hungry ones. She thought of Maggie. Where was she tonight? Had she made it back? Did she know strangers were arguing about her dignity in comment sections? Ariel closed the app and shoved the phone into her bag, as it might bite her. Caleb Holloway saw the video at 2:14 a.m. He wasn't scrolling aimlessly, he never did. He was reviewing quarterly projections, mind-splitting numbers into patterns the way it always had. His phone lay face down beside the laptop, silent. Then it buzzed once, twice, a third time insistently. He glanced at it, irritated. The notification preview caught his eye. Trending, woman with special needs comforted by Waitress. He almost ignored it. Almost. The clip loaded without sound at first. Caleb leaned forward. The diner, the counter, the posture, familiar in a way that made his throat tighten before his mind caught up. Then the woman shifted slightly, and he knew. The room seemed to tilt. He turned the volume up, heard her voice, older now, slower, but unmistakably hers, the cadence, the dry humor folded into embarrassment, the way she deflected care even while accepting it. His hands went cold. Maggie. Not a memory, not a file, not an update in an email from a facility administrator. Her. Kneeling in front of her was a young black woman with steady hands and an expression Caleb couldn't look away from. Focused,
gentle, unperformative. The comments scrolled beside the video, but Caleb didn't read them. He watched Maggie's shoulders drop, the way relief crossed her face like something she hadn't expected to feel anymore. Something inside him cracked, clean and sharp. He replayed it. Again. He remembered being 15, furious at the world, interpreting silence as rejection, remembered structure instead of softness, expectations instead of reassurance. He remembered telling himself he didn't need anyone. He remembered deciding distance was mercy. Caleb leaned back in his chair, laptop forgotten. The room was too quiet. His pulse thudded in his ears, heavy and insistent. He had paid for care. He had signed papers. He had trusted professionals. He had not shown up. The laughter that once coated his edges, dry, dismissive, protective, was gone. There was no irony here, no wit, just a question that wouldn't let him breathe around it. What if he had been wrong? He shut the phone off and sat in the dark, the glow of the city outside his window blurring into something meaningless. Ariel lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, phone face down on the nightstand like a loaded weapon. Caleb stood at his window, hands braced against the glass, watching a city that suddenly felt very far away. Two lives held still by the same moment. Neither of them was ready for what came next.
Caleb Holloway had always believed money simplified things. Not fixed them, he wasn't naive, but simplified them. Money removed friction. It shortened conversations. It replaced apologies with solutions. If something broke, you paid someone smarter to repair it and moved on. It worked. Until it didn't. He sat in his kitchen long after the city went quiet, coffee cooling untouched beside him. The video replayed in his head on a loop he couldn't mute. Maggie's sigh, the relief, the way her body leaned into care like it hadn't been offered in a long time. He rubbed a hand over his face. "You funded this," he told himself. "You handled it." That line had always been enough. Caleb grew up believing systems were something you survived, not trusted. Foster homes taught him that early. Paperwork came faster than people. Promises moved more slowly than caseworkers. So when Maggie adopted him, structured, composed, all boundaries and expectations, he didn't see love. He saw another system. She ran her house like a syllabus. Dinner at 6, homework before TV. Questions answered if they were practical. Praise was delivered sparingly, like a resource that needed managing. He had wanted warmth. He got prepared. At 15, he told himself that was fine. He'd learned not to ask for what wasn't offered. By 18, he left without looking back. Not dramatically, just decisively. College, work, momentum. Maggie stayed where she was, proud but distant, calling occasionally, never pressing. He mistook restraint for indifference. She mistook independence for confidence. They both survived their assumptions. Caleb snorted softly at the memory. Efficient, he thought. Emotionally illiterate, but efficient. He'd built his entire adult life on that same blueprint. Control the variables, remove uncertainty, outsource what you can't manage. When Maggie's husband died and the reports came in, mild cognitive decline, early onset dementia, Caleb responded the only way he knew how. He paid, he signed, he trusted professionals who spoke in polished phrases and tidy percentages. He didn't visit. He told himself it was kindness, that watching someone fade would only reopen old resentments, that distance was cleaner, that money was care in another form. He laughed once, bitter and quiet. Money was excellent at solving problems that came with invoices. It was useless at noticing who needed time. Caleb stood and paced the kitchen, bare feet against cold tile. He tried to remember the last time Maggie had laughed like she did in the video, tried to recall softness without effort. What he remembered instead were rules, structure, silence where affection should have been. And yet, she had adopted him when she didn't have to. She had stayed up late reviewing his school options, had driven him to interviews, had corrected his posture and his tone because she believed presentation mattered. She had never told him she loved him. She had shown it like an obligation. Caleb stopped pacing.
That doesn't mean it wasn't love, a quieter voice offered. He resisted it at first. Resentment was easier. It gave his past clean edges, let him believe leaving had been necessary, not avoidant. But the video refused to cooperate. Maggie hadn't looked cold. She hadn't looked distant. She'd looked tired, in pain, relieved in a way that suggested she hadn't expected relief at all. Caleb sat back down, elbows on the counter, hands clasped. His reflection in the dark window looked older than he felt, less certain. What if the system hadn't failed him? What if he'd just mistaken structure for rejection? The thought lodged uncomfortably. He'd built an empire by trusting his instincts, by assuming he saw clearly, by moving forward without apology. Now doubt crept in. Not dramatic, not loud, just a hairline fracture. If he had been wrong about Maggie, what else had he misread? Caleb picked up his phone, stared at the screen, then set it back down without unlocking it. Not yet. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure which assumption had kept him alive and which one had kept him away. The city lights flickered beyond the glass. Caleb watched them, uncertain, and let the doubts stay.
The facility smelled like disinfectant and something faintly sweet, like lemon trying to apologize. Ariel signed in with a pen chained to the clipboard, the kind that never quite worked unless you held it at an angle. She smiled at the receptionist, pleasant, tired, practiced. "Visiting?" the woman asked. "Just checking," Ariel said, which was true and somehow insufficient. The hallway was a lesson in good intentions stretched thin, doors labeled with names written too small, a television murmuring to no one in particular, a schedule posted on the wall that promised activities every hour and delivered maybe 2. Ariel found Maggie near the window, coat folded on her lap as she might leave at any moment. She looked calmer than she had in the diner, straighter, more herself. "There you are," Maggie said, relief flickering across her face before she caught it. "I was beginning to think you were theoretical." Ariel laughed. "I exist, on certain days." Maggie peered at her. "You look different here." "Fluorescent lighting does that," Ariel said. "It humbles everyone." They sat. Maggie talked about the chair that squeaked, about a woman down the hall who sang off-key but with commitment, about how the pudding arrived at unpredictable times and always tasted like resignation. Food shouldn't give up on itself, Maggie said. An aide passed by, young and exhausted, hair pulled back too tightly. She paused, smiled at Maggie. "Are you behaving today?" Maggie sniffed. "Define behaving." The aide grinned. "She's sharp," she said to Ariel. "Keeps us honest." "Someone has to," Maggie replied. The aide lingered a moment longer than necessary, then sighed. "If you need anything, buzz. If it doesn't work, buzz again, or shout. Sometimes shouting works faster." She moved on, already laughing at something a coworker said, a laugh that sounded like survival. Ariel watched her go, something tightening behind her ribs. She asked questions the way she'd learned to, curious, not accusatory. How often were medications reviewed? Who checked in overnight? How many residents per shift? The answers came wrapped in humor. "We do our best. It's been busy. Funding's complicated." Complicated was the word people used when they didn't want to say not enough. Ariel leaned closer. "They're kind," she said quietly. "Just tired." "I know," Ariel said. They walked the hallway together. Maggie steadied herself on Ariel's arm without asking. It felt natural, like it had been decided somewhere else. In the common room, a man slept upright, mouth open, television flickering. Another woman stared at a puzzle with all the edge pieces missing. Maggie's voice sharpened here, as if clarity liked movement. "They keep telling me my son will visit." Ariel's heart skipped. "Has he?" Maggie shrugged. "He's busy, important. He always was." A beat. "I don't think he liked me much." Ariel stopped walking. "I don't think that's true." Maggie smiled, thin and knowing. People don't always like the people who prepare them. Ariel thought of her parents, alive, loving, unable to help, of herself at 18, choosing work over comfort, independence over explanation,
of how easy it was to misread care when it didn't arrive wrapped the way you expected. They sat again by the window. Maggie grew quieter. Her words slowed, but her eyes stayed sharp. "You don't have to come back," Maggie said suddenly. "I'll forget if you don't." Ariel swallowed. "That's not—" "It's practical," Maggie insisted. "You have a life." "I do, and I can still come back." Maggie studied her. "Why?" Ariel searched for a clever answer and found none. "Because you make sense to me." The humor thinned after that. The laughter softened, then faded. What remained was resolve, the steady kind that didn't announce itself. On her way out, Ariel stopped at the desk again, asked about care plans, about consistency, about who noticed when residents wandered. The receptionist smiled, apologetic. "We document everything." "I'm sure you do, but who notices?" The woman hesitated. Ariel walked out into late afternoon light, the sky low and heavy like it might rain without committing. She stood there longer than necessary, feeling the weight of a decision she hadn't known she was making. Staying felt inconvenient. It felt like rearranging her life, shifts, classes, savings, to make room for someone who needed consistency more than grand gestures. She thought of the video, the noise, the eyes. This was quieter. This mattered more. She pulled out her phone, scrolled past the comments she hadn't answered yet, past the messages she didn't have language for yet. She found one name she hadn't saved, Caleb Holloway. She stared at it, breath steadying. Inside, Maggie watched the door long after Ariel left, calmer than she'd been all week, as if something had been decided for her too, even if she couldn't name it. What if staying is louder than leaving ever was? The first thing Caleb noticed was the language. Not the people, not the building, the language. Optimized resident engagement, resource-efficient staffing, behavioral redirection protocols. The administrator said it all with a smile that suggested confidence, competence, and a binder full of bullet points. Caleb nodded, hands clasped behind his back, posture neutral. He'd been in rooms like this his whole life, rooms where words were chosen not to reflect reality, but to survive it. Resource efficient, he repeated mildly. The administrator laughed, relieved. Exactly, we do more with less. Caleb thought, that's one way to describe it. Another was, people wait longer than they should. They walked the hallways, beige walls, clean floors, too clean, like no one lingered long enough to leave a mark. A television mounted too high for anyone to comfortably watch. Chairs arranged in a circle that suggested conversation rarely happened but was always planned. This wing houses residents with mild cognitive decline, the administrator said. They're largely independent. A woman wandered past them, slippers on the wrong feet, asking no one in particular where the exit had gone. Caleb stopped walking. "How often are they checked on?" he asked. "Hourly," the administrator replied smoothly, "unless they're sleeping or engaged." "Engaged in what?" She blinked. "Activities." He let that sit. They passed a nurse joking quietly with an aide, both of them moving faster than they should have to. Exhaustion lived in their shoulders. Humor lived in their mouths. It was the kind of humor that kept people upright when rest wasn't coming. Caleb respected it. He resented that it was necessary. By the time they reached Maggie's room, his jaw ached from holding questions in place. "I'll give you privacy," the administrator said, already backing away. "She's been calmer lately. Must be the new routine." Caleb nodded. The door closed. Maggie sat by the window, cardigan folded neatly on her lap, gaze fixed on something outside that wasn't there. She looked smaller than he remembered, or maybe quieter. "Maggie?" he said. She turned slowly. Her eyes narrowed, not in confusion, but recognition delayed. "Well," she said, "you took your time." The words landed without anger, without warmth, just fact. Caleb swallowed. "Hi." She studied him, head tilting. "You grew taller than I expected." It shouldn't have hurt. It did. "I'm sitting," he said, because it was the only thing he could think of. Maggie smiled faintly. "That explains it." He moved closer, careful not to crowd her. The room smelled faintly of laundry detergent and something medicinal. Safe, sterile, incomplete. "You look busy," she said. "I am," he admitted. She nodded, satisfied. "You always were." Silence settled. Not hostile, not forgiving, just present. "I saw you at the diner." Maggie's eyes flickered. "Did you?" "Yes." She considered that. "I liked her." "I know." "She pays attention." "I know." Maggie folded her hands. "You don't." There it was. No accusation, no bitterness, just an observation offered the way she'd always offered them. Plain, undramatic, devastatingly accurate. Caleb sat back, breath unsteady. "I thought I was helping." "You paid. That's not the same thing." He nodded once. He deserved that. She glanced towards the door. "She comes here now." "Yes." "I remember her better than most things lately. That seems important." "It is." Maggie leaned back, eyes closing briefly. When she opened them again, they were tired. "I wasn't good at saying things. Your father—" She stopped, corrected herself without apology. "My husband. He said feelings didn't need witnesses." Caleb felt something loosen in his chest. "I thought you didn't want me." Maggie frowned. "I wanted you prepared." The difference between those two things felt suddenly enormous. A nurse knocked lightly and peeked in. "Everything okay in here?" "Yes," Maggie said crisply. "We're recalibrating." The nurse smiled, confused but respectful, and left. Caleb laughed once, quietly. "You always did that." "Someone had to," Maggie said. "You were impatient." "I was scared." She looked at him then, really looked. So was I. The fallout came later. It came in the car, parked 2 blocks away, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel as it might move without permission. It came in the form of questions he couldn't unask and answers he didn't like. He had trusted systems because they were easier than people. He had confused absence with restraint, structure with coldness, and payment with presence. He had missed her. Caleb leaned his forehead against the wheel, eyes closed. Money hadn't failed him. It had just never been enough. And for the first time, he understood exactly what it had cost.
Caleb had always trusted numbers. They behaved, they lined up, they told the truth if you knew how to ask the right questions. He spread the reports across his dining table like a dealer laying out cards. State allocations, facility budgets, reimbursement schedules, subcontractor fees. Everything neat, everything legal, everything wrong. He stared at a column labeled Operational Optimization and felt his jaw tighten. Money flowed in, then thinned, then disappeared into administrative language so smooth it almost felt kind. Almost. A knock sounded, soft, measured. Ariel stepped in, backpack slung over one shoulder, hair still smelling faintly like diner coffee. She took in the scene in a glance, the papers, the tension, the way Caleb stood like he might punch a spreadsheet if it blinked. "Wow," she said lightly. "This is what guilt looks like when it has a printer." Caleb exhaled beside himself. "You're early." "I finished a paper on workplace ethics," she said. "Thought I'd check on the live case study." He snorted, sharp and humorless. "It's worse than I thought." She moved closer, eyes scanning, without touching. "It usually is." Caleb tapped a page. Funds earmarked for direct care are routed through 3 intermediaries. Each takes a reasonable percentage. By the time it hits the floor, it's barely enough to staff a shift. "Reasonable," Ariel echoed. "My favorite word. It means no one has to explain themselves." His anger flared. "They call it efficiency." She met his gaze. "They call it survival."
That slowed him, just a fraction. "You're not angry enough," he said. Ariel shrugged. "I am. I just don't confuse anger with accuracy." He studied her, surprised. "You should." "I can't," she said. "Anger makes people sloppy. Sloppy gets ignored." He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "They let her wander." "I know. They missed medications." "I know. They documented everything," he added bitterly, "just not the parts that mattered." Ariel nodded. "That's the system. It's built to record compliance, not care." Silence settled, heavy but not hostile. Caleb softened his voice. "Why did you stay?" She didn't answer right away. She looked at the papers again, then at him. "Because I recognized her." "In who?" "In me," Ariel said simply. "Not the illness, the independence, the way she refuses pity but needs consistency. People like that fall through cracks because they don't make noise." Caleb swallowed. "I thought paying meant I was present." "You paid for access," she said gently, "not attention." He closed his eyes briefly. "I failed her." "Yes," Ariel said, then quieter, "but you're here now." That landed harder than an accusation ever could. They worked through the night. Caleb traced the money. Ariel traced the people, names, roles, routines. Where Caleb saw corruption, Ariel saw exhaustion weaponized by policy. "This aide works 16-hour shifts," she said, pointing. "She's not negligent, she's drowning." "I know. That doesn't make it acceptable." "No," Ariel agreed, "but it tells you where to aim." He looked at her then, really looked, not as the woman from the video, not as Maggie's anchor, as someone who understood systems the way he understood markets. "You good at this," he said. She smiled faintly. "I told you, HR." They shared a look, mutual respect, edged with something warmer. Not flirtation, recognition. The stakes rose quietly. Caleb drafted calls, lined up audits, pressed pressure points that didn't announce themselves. He moved with precision, not spectacle. Ariel watched, occasionally redirecting. "You're about to scare them," she said once. "That's the point. Scare them into fixing things," she corrected, "not hiding them." He adjusted without argument. By dawn, the city outside the windows lightened, gray and honest. The table was a battlefield of paper and clarity. Caleb leaned back, exhausted. "They'll push back." "Of course," Ariel said. "Systems don't like mirrors." "I'm ready," he said. "Then start with her." He stilled. "Maggie?" "Admit it to her first, not the press, not the board, her." Caleb thought of the way Maggie had said, "You don't pay attention," thought of, "You grew taller than I expected." "I will," he said. Ariel gathered her bag. "Good." As she turned to leave, Caleb spoke again. "Thank you." She paused. "For what?" "For staying," he said, when leaving would have been easier. She looked back, expression soft but steady. "I didn't stay to be brave." "I know. I stayed because it mattered." Caleb nodded. The anger that had fueled him all night settled into something sharper, purpose stripped of ego. As the door closed behind Ariel, he looked once more at the paperwork, not as proof, as a confession. What if justice begins with admitting who you failed? Caleb didn't apologize. He didn't stand in Maggie's room with his hands folded, voice softened, searching for language that would never quite land. He didn't explain himself into absolution or rehearse remorse like a speech meant for an audience. He did something else. By the end of the week, the administrator who liked phrases like resource efficient was no longer smiling. Audits arrived without warning. Funding streams were frozen, traced, and rerouted. Contracts rewritten. Oversight was reinstated where it had quietly disappeared. No press conference, no public statement, just movement. Caleb worked the way he always had, precise, relentless, unsentimental. Only this time, the goal wasn't growth or leverage, it was a correction. He replaced the rotating staff with consistent teams, raised wages without fanfare, adjusted ratios so no one had to joke their way through exhaustion just to stay upright. He funded training that wasn't optional and care plans that weren't theoretical. People noticed, not loudly, but enough. When he returned to Maggie's room, it looked the same. Same window, same chair, but something had shifted. The air felt steadier. Maggie sat with a crossword on her lap, pencil poised like she was negotiating with it. She glanced up. "You're back?" "Yes." She studied him. "You look tired." "I am." "Good," Maggie said. "That means you're doing something useful." Caleb smiled, despite the knot in his chest. He pulled a chair closer, sat, not across from her, beside. "I fixed some things," he said. Maggie shrugged. "People say that a lot." "I know." He took a breath. "So I built something." Her pencil paused. "That sounds expensive." "It is." Maggie looked at him over her glasses. "You have a habit of overcorrecting." He nodded. "This one's intentional." He told her simply, no jargon, no triumph. A foundation, focused on care facilities like this one, on consistency, on dignity, on making sure people didn't disappear quietly because paperwork said they were handled. Maggie listened without interrupting, which is how Caleb knew it mattered. "And," Caleb added, "I named it after you." She blinked. Once, twice. Then she laughed, short, incredulous, sharp. "That's excessive." Caleb felt his throat tighten. It felt accurate. Maggie shook her head, smiling despite herself. "You always did confuse scale with meaning." "Maybe," said Caleb, "but this time I checked." She studied him for a long moment, gaze clear in a way that felt like a gift. "You didn't have to do all that." "Yes," Caleb said quietly, "I did." The confession came without ceremony. "I thought money meant I was present. I thought distance was kinder than confusion. I thought you didn't need me." Maggie looked back down at the crossword, filled in a word carefully. "People think structure means coldness. It doesn't. It means fear managed poorly." Caleb swallowed. "I thought you didn't want me." Her pencil stilled. "I wanted you prepared," she said, echoing herself, firmer this time. "I didn't know how to say the rest." He nodded, eyes burning. "I should have asked." "Yes," said Caleb, then, after a beat, "but you were busy being tall." He laughed, once, sharp, surprised, and the sound broke something open. Tears followed, quiet and uninvited. He didn't wipe them away. He didn't apologize for them either. Maggie reached out, patting his hand with awkward tenderness. There, you've done enough dramatics for one day." Caleb laughed through it, breath uneven. "You named the foundation excessive." "Because it is," she said, "but it's also nice." That was the closest she came to praise. Later, Ariel stood in the doorway, having given them space. She caught Caleb's eye. He nodded once. "It's done," he said. She stepped in, smile cautious. "The foundation? And the immediate fixes. This place, others like it." Maggie looked between them. "You two talk like you're plotting." Ariel smiled. "Only the good kind." "That's what they all say." Caleb watched them, this strange, unexpected alignment, and felt something settle into place. Not redemption, not relief. Responsibility finally claimed. As he stood to leave, Maggie spoke again. "Caleb?" "Yes?" "You did miss a few years." "I know." She waved a hand. "We'll adjust." He smiled, steady now. "Yes, we will." Outside, the sky had cleared. The rain stopped without announcement. The light shifted, not brighter, just calmer. Caleb didn't apologize. He stayed. And for the first time, it felt like enough. Ariel learned that mornings had a different weight when they belonged to more than one life. She woke early now, not from panic or deadlines, but from alignment. Coffee brewed while she skimmed class notes. Emails waited beside her textbooks. The foundation's calendar lived next to her exam schedule, color-coded in a way that would have made her younger self laugh. "Balanced," she muttered, adjusting her backpack. Loosely. She spent afternoons at the foundation office, small, clean, intentionally unflashy. No marble, no grand statements, just people who listened before they fixed things. Ariel moved through it naturally, translating between worlds, policy and people, budget lines and lived days. She was good at it. Caleb noticed. He noticed the way she asked questions before offering answers, the way she didn't perform compassion, she operationalized it. He stayed precise, still favored clean decisions and quiet authority, but the armor had loosened, not removed, set aside when it wasn't needed. They worked well together, not romantically, not dramatically, just steadily. Maggie remained the axis. Some days she was sharp, correcting staff names, commenting on Ariel's shoes, too ambitious for walking, reminding Caleb to eat lunch like it was a contractual obligation. Other days she drifted, forgot names, repeated stories, held Ariel's hand too long, as if anchoring herself to something solid. Caleb learned to read those days without panic. Presence mattered more than progress. One afternoon, Ariel found Maggie in the garden, sun warming her face. She was humming, tune uncertain but committed. "You're off key," Ariel said gently. "I know. It keeps people alert." Caleb joined them, sleeves rolled up, posture relaxed. He handed Maggie a folded paper. "What's this?" she asked. "A schedule for the week." She squinted. "I don't like surprises." I remembered. She smiled at that, small, genuine. "Good." They sat together without needing to fill the space. A nurse passed by, unhurried. Laughter drifted from inside, not forced, not brittle, real. Later, as Ariel packed up to leave for class, Caleb walked her out. "You're doing too much," he said, not unkindly. She adjusted her bag. "I've always done too much." "I can take more," he said. "You don't have to carry it alone." She met his gaze. "I know. I just don't want to forget how." He nodded, understanding the line she was drawing. Respect settled between them, easy and earned. Maggie watched them from the window, then called out, "If you're done being responsible, I'd like pudding." Ariel laughed. "See? Immediate feedback." Caleb smiled. "We aim for efficiency." "Don't use that word near me," Maggie warned. "It attracts nonsense." They laughed together, quiet, comfortable, the kind of laughter that didn't ask to be remembered. That evening, Ariel studied late. Caleb reviewed budgets. Maggie slept, then woke, then slept again. The world didn't change all at once. It adjusted. It held. No one needed a speech. Love lived in repetition now, in showing up, in meals remembered, in questions asked twice and answered kindly both times, in systems rebuilt not to impress, but to endure. When Ariel finally headed home, she paused at the door, looked back once. Maggie stirred, murmured something about toast. Caleb pulled a chair closer, patient. Ariel smiled and stepped into the night steady. Some kindness doesn't come back bigger. It comes back home. Show kindness to someone today. Make that long-forgotten call. If someone has helped you before, share in the comments. Tag that person and a thank you.
Hey you, my fellow story family. Thank you for staying with us till the very end. We'd love to hear how this story made you feel. Would you have done anything differently? What did it teach you? If this story mirrors a season of your own life, feel free to share it with us in the comments. Stay close to this channel for more stories that speak of strength, love, and hope.